Shabbat Shalom. In this video, I want to engage in a bit of philology, looking closely at a single word, which I think can be quite instructive in understanding the Parsha and understanding the Torah and understanding even subsequent Jewish history. The verse occurs towards the end of Sefer Bamidbar, where the Torah talks about Arei HaMiklat, the sanctuary cities, where someone who commits manslaughter, who inadvertently kills someone without any premeditation, without any intent, can find refuge from the revenge, which in those days was still an option for the family of the deceased. And the Torah, after describing the rules, the laws that determine whether the case is actually one of manslaughter and what the rules concerning the cities are and so on, goes on to say that this applies only to inadvertent killing, but actual murder cannot be tolerated and has to be punished because the land of Israel, does not tolerate murder. And it sums it up in two verses, which read in Hebrew. The first one, V'lo tachnifu et haaretz asher atem ba, ki adam hu yachanif et haaretz. And the second verse is V'lo tatamei et haaretz asher atem yeshim ba. So it tells us two things not to do to the land. The meaning of the second verse, V'lo tatamu et haaretz, is very clear. Don't make the land impure. But what does lo tachnifu et haaretz mean? Tachnif is obviously a transitive form of the root hanafa, and the direct object is the land. But what does it mean? It seems that the commentators, modern and ancient and medieval, were for the most part at a loss. They basically took it to mean the same thing as the second verse, which is easily rendered as do not pollute or to contaminate the land. Titamu, like tachanifu, is a transitive verb, taking haaretz as the direct object. But it's just really a case of the Bible repeating the same thought, the same prohibition in the same language? One would think not. Yet Rashi, the Targum, and even the English translations from the King James onward, and even the modern JPS version, all translate tachnifu in the sense of to pollute, to contaminate, to defile, just as the meaning of the tamu would be. I don't think this is correct, and we'll see in a minute that the Ramban gives a much more convincing explanation of what the word means. Well, very briefly, the Ramban, I think correctly, takes the root meaning of hanaf, to mean to be dishonest. And that would make the transitive form, li-hahneef, to mean to cause someone to be dishonest. So if we were to allow murder to run rampant in the land and people's blood to be shed where the murderers going scot-free, we would be causing the land to be dishonest. Don't cause the land to be dishonest. What's the connection? How does being lax in enforcing the sanctity of human life lead to the land being honest? Well, the land of Israel reacts to these crimes. And in the klalot, in the tochechot, in the stern warnings and dire warnings of retribution that we have at the end of Sefer Vayikra and then of Sefer Devarim, we're told, among other things, that if we disobey the Torah, then the land will be dishonest towards us. How does it mean be dishonest towards us? Zerav totzia sadeh umat tesof. The land will produce a bountiful crop, but you will harvest very little. Kramim titav avadata v'yayin lo tishteh. You plant vineyards, you cultivate them, but you won't get to drink the wine. And it goes on in the same vein about the olive groves and not being able to make use of the olive oil. In other words, the land will be dishonest towards us. It will put on a face of being, responsive and rewarding and giving us these huge crops as a reward for our labor, then in the end we'll enjoy none of it. So we will cause the land to be dishonest. We will cause the land to put up a front of giving us these rich produce, and that is because we were dishonest and corrupt in letting murderers go scot-free, in letting having sort of these phony trials where murderers are let off the hook for financial reasons or for political reasons, and that's what lo tachnifu means. This is how the Ramban understands it, and he quotes the Sifrei, which says that this verse is the Azara, the biblical source for a more general sweeping commandment against fraudulent behavior, against putting yourself on for what you are not. And this is something that's picked up by Rabbi Soloveitchik in his commentary on the Torah and on this verse. Now, in the same vein, and following upon the Midrash, the Sifrei, let me just read you what the Rabbi Soloveitchik has to say as part of his comment on this verse. And again, I'm putting the text on the screen. Deliberately trying to convey a misleading impression, such as disguising oneself as a righteous person, is a serious transgression. The source for the prohibition against this type of hypocrisy is found in this verse, exactly as the phrase said, that Harizu azhara li-hahneefim. This verse, v'lo tachnifu et haaretz, is the prohibition for any and all of us to present ourselves as we are not, especially to present ourselves as great, righteous, pure people when we're anything but that. Now, just as sort of a bonus, but I think an interesting continuation of this theme, let's jump ahead to the Qur'an, where we find the same root, hanaf, same three consonants, used in a religious context. And again, the word has defied the greatest efforts of commentators, mufassirun, exegetes, scholars, and so on. Great deal of controversy, great deal of effort has been expended into understanding the verse. The verse is where the Qur'an contrasts Ibrahim, Avram Avinu, with the Jews and the Nazareans of their day, that is the day of the Prophet Muhammad, saying that, as we see here in the verse, which again I've put on the screen for you, the Quran says, Makana Ibrahim Yahudiyan wala Nasraniyan, walakin kana Hanifan Musliman, wala kana min al-mushrikin. Abraham was neither a Jew nor a Nazarene. He was instead a hanif, a Muslim. He was not a polytheist. So what does this mean, hanif? I left the word untranslated. The traditional commentators all say, a righteous person, a mu'min, someone who believes in the one God. Obviously, expanding it according to the context, because there's no really way to justify this on the basis of Arabic philology or lexicology. The commentators have found some distantly removed forms which only with a great deal of effort can be shown to fit the meaning of the verse. But one explanation that I think is compelling, though again many people don't accept it, is that hanif would mean here someone who is uncircumcised, and the contrast is between the Jews, who are of course circumcised, and the Nazarenes. That's why I translated it literally. Nazarenes are not Christians, because there were apparently two groups in the early stages of Christianity. There were the Christians who accepted Paul's antinomian annulment of biblical law, especially circumcision. But then there were the so-called Nazarenes, these Jews who remained faithful to Jewish tradition and Jewish law, but recognized Jesus as a saintly figure. So they were sort of in the middle. They were unlike the Jews in that they saw Jesus to be a very important spiritual figure, but they were unlike the Christians, so to speak, in that they continued to circumcise. And what the Quran is saying here is that Abraham was neither. He was uncircumcised. Now, what does this, why uncircumcised? Of course, we all know that Abraham circumcised himself, but how old was he? He was close to 100 years old. And if he discovered God when he was 40, as the Rambam says, putting aside the other views that are less compelling. He spent 60 years as a believer, as a real true believer in God, yet uncircumcised. So again, we have hanif, meaning someone whose exterior is not the same thing as his interior. That is, say, an exterior, he continues to have the orla, the foreskin. He would look as any other pagan would look, but within, he is a believer. He is a mu'min. He is someone who has found God and worships God. And so this really, I think, fits in well with what we've been saying about the biblical hanif. Again, there's skipping over tons and tons of learned philology and Aramaic and Syriac, but I think the message is clear that we should take this biblical prohibition in the two senses that we've set forth here. First of all, to be careful to observe, to make sure that we have the rule of law and don't allow murder to run rampant, blood to be shed, because we will cause the land, and the land of Israel reacts to these sort of crimes, and it will fool us and defraud us. But also, we should take this as a more general prohibition, not to yet tochenu kivorenu, that we should always not put on any false images, not try to fool people into thinking that we're holy when we're not. We should try and be honest with others and with ourselves. Thank you very much, and Shabbat Shalom.